Hello, everyone. So when we were last in here, we wanted to update the display here when we had items. And I actually worked on a video to show how to do this. And unfortunately, I had my mic turned off for it. So rather than try to redo the audio, which would be next to impossible, I will quickly review what I did. But just to demonstrate now, when there's a word on the lexicon side that has associations, we can just click on it and it will give us the associations there. And what I've done here to get this working is I went and cleared out all the language files, all of the lexicon and word data completely, and then rebuilt it just to make sure everything was set to normal and that we were good to go. So this part is still working as intended. So if I come over here with this, you can see that the Spanish word hola is connected with hello here. If we come down here, it still will say the word's already linked. You want to unlink it. We hit yes, and it's disassociated. You can then just click back over here on the word, and it'll show what is still associated there, which I put the Ukrainian word. And I just copied and pasted this in from Google Translate to get that with the character set. I did install the Ukrainian locale settings for Microsoft Windows as well, so I can start typing with that moving forward as well. But for now, we want to re-add this back. We just hit the link again. It will say, the word hello was associated with hola. We're good to go. Again, I click back on here. And because there's only one item, clicking anywhere on this resets the selection index and re-triggers how this shows up. So that's what the results here will be looking like. Now, let me go ahead and close out and show how we got to that. I did have to correct one minor bit of code because as we were going through, I realized that while we had the association set up, if the word already existed in the list with a single language, when we try to add another language, we just had this return. So it never re-added the next language in. So this part works here. This part is triggered if there's a brand new word that's never been added. This part triggers if it's a duplicate relationship. And then this part here will trigger if the word exists, but it's not already set up to that same side of the target language. So we have to cover all of those bases. I was tempted to put this kind of stuff here because it's the same code down here as well, basically. Very similar. We did have to change temp lexicon here, and this is just the all lexicon items because we already have it existing here. But I was tempted to move this into its own method. I've decided that for as little amount of repetition as we got, and the fact that we would have to pass in what lexicon to do, and we'd have to pass in variables for it, it was easier at this point just to copy and paste that in there. So this is now the code for the link button. So if you click on the button to link or unlink, make sure if you're following along that you've made these appropriate changes on here. After that, we've also updated this a little bit to make sure the wording is appropriate. So when we've actually changed the selected index, so it's no longer -1, then what we want to do is we come in here, reset this rich text box display to have nothing. It's going to clear it out. And then we're going to rebuild this. So the current lexicon word is going to be the same thing where we send that in. We get the word from our all lexicon. This part we've used before, so I won't go into too much detail. But we then have this Boolean where we say enter loops, and we set it to false. Now, this Boolean is actually to be used down here. Basically, what we do is once we have all the lexicon items, we loop through until we find it matching the current lexicon word. If it already matches in there, then what we need to do is see if it has any associated words or phrases. So we find the count. The count needs to be greater than 0. If it is greater than 0, then we update the text with this word. So the word itself that we pulled in, and we'll say it is associated with, and then this here designates a new line in the rich text box. So the \n says it will be a new line to be printed. So that's kind of the return character. And we set this interloops to true because we next need to go if there is the ability to have the association. So if there are associations, we need to come in and grab the associations. So we then go from J, we used I up here, so we picked J here. These are just indexes for the loops. And we go through all of the number of associations that exist. And then because the way that we're storing this is we have the language ID stored and then the word ID, we need to do this mathematical process right here. This is how we do modular math. So essentially we take J is going to be the index of what we're counting through the associated words or phrases, and then we're going to divide it by 2. And we're looking for the remainder when that happens. The reason why is if the remainder is 0, which is what this is saying. So if J divided by 2 gives a remainder of 0, then we know the number is even. We know it's the language. So at that point, we create our temporary list of words. So we loop through the languages that exist, find the language ID that matches the associated ID for this word or phrase. So the index, again, we've stored first the language ID. So we loop through languages, find that, and then we display out and we put in this language name for the word that was going to follow. So that's what this is. Now, the good news about why I put this here is that this ID is defined up here. So it's kind of global to this entire method, but we reset it at this point. That means that when it comes through and J is not an even number, so when 0 comes through, it's going to have a remainder of 0, so it'll pick the language. But when J is 1, it's going to skip this. So we'll have whatever was stored here carry across to this section here. So after we've got this language, what we do is we load the temp list of words that we are loading all of the words for this particular language. So we're pulling all of those in. That way we have a record of the words for that language. When we get down to this part, then we loop through that list of words and we find the word that matches the ID for the word section. So again, when this is even, we pull the language, we look up all the words for that language. When this is odd, because we've looked up the words for this language, then we loop through that until we find the specific word. And then we just update the display here. So we just add in that word or phrase, and then we add the period at the end with this \n for the new line. So then if it loops through again and it's another even number, we come in, this resets this list back to nothing at this point. So it clears it out and then rebuilds it based on the language. And so it continues to iterate that way. So this is how we end up filling the list. And one thing that we can do as well, which I didn't actually show yet, I still have this set up for where if we come into manage the lexicon, and we select English on here, and we select English on here, we can actually click on both. We wouldn't really want to do it to the same word as I'm thinking about, but let's say we add the word hi on this. We come in here, we've got hi, we save that. Now, because English is showing for both, hi actually shows up on here, but if we click on this, okay, I'll have to check why that doesn't do this box correctly. We'll have to see how this loads. That should be an easy fix, but here's what we want to do. So when this comes in, we want to link it to hi. And so we can just select hello and hi, and we can do link and unlink. Now that's selected here. If I click off of this, then we can see the hello is associated with the English word hi as well. Now, why do we want to do that? When we go into build our flashcards, and I'll just do a quick mock-up of the flashcards for the end of this particular video. When we do that, we want to have the ability to potentially check for synonyms. If I am looking up Spanish, for example, load the Spanish words. If I select hola, now hola is not yet linked back to either of these we're not going to be using Spanish as the lexicon for this, so we don't need that link back. Again, this hopefully will make a little bit more sense when I show you the actual flashcards as we build them. But when we present hola, it's possible for us to say the answer is hello or hi. Both of those are acceptable. But if we only have this associated with hola from hello, and we don't have hi, also associated over with the same word, if this is presented as the return word and hola is the prompt and you type hi, there's no way for us to know that hi is an acceptable synonym for hello unless we've linked hello to hi as well. So it's a little bit complicated to talk about, but once we actually show the process, it should be fairly straightforward. So to create our temporary deck, I'm actually just going to use our lexicon that we've created here. But we need to access it from our form 1, which is over here. We're going to need to bring this in where we start the user entered. So one of the things that we can do in order to do that is we'll need to actually update some of these methods. I want to actually change load lexicon into one that returns the list of lexicon items. So what we'll do here is instead of having a void, a private void, we're going to make this into a public list of lexicon. And then what we're going to do here, after all of this is complete, we will then return all lexicon items. But we'll want to include a temporary list here because we don't want to actually add it to the real one. We're going to need this later as well. So what I'll do here is we will do a list of lexicon words as a new list. That actually works perfect for here. And we'll come down here and change this to words. And we'll add that in, and we will actually return words like so. And then to get this to work up here, we're going to have all lexicon items is equal to when we load the lexicon. Now let's just run this really quick and make sure that this is still functioning as intended. So we can come up here, log in, select the user, come up here, manage lexicon, come over here, we do English, it's hello, it's still associated, everything looks like it is the way we want it to look, so it looks good. Now, the reason why I did this is because now at form 1, so we'll come up to form 1 here, when we come to user entered, we can actually create a list of lexicon. And this is going to be our temp deck, and that's going to be a new list lexicon. And we'll create, and we can actually just say temp deck is equal to manage lexicon dot load lexicon. Oh, I need to add a public static list lexicon. That's what we needed in there. Now we come back here, and now this should work. Let's make sure we get this dot load lexicon, and we'll send that in. Now we will have temp deck available for use within form 1. So that's perfect. Now we still need to get the words that were included with this. So let us also make this into a static. So now we can load the individual words. And it's tempting to load the languages, but we'll need to do some refactoring on this in order to get this to work correctly. I don't want to go too much into refactoring on this current video. We will address refactoring in a little bit. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to copy this portion of it. We don't need the fail state bits. I'll copy this portion of it and come back to form 1. And at this point, we'll create it. We'll do a temporary one. We'll put it right here after user denied. We're just going to say temporary because we're going to delete this. We'll paste this in. It does help if I make it into a private void load languages method. that in place here. Come back down to here. Yeah, we might need these variables, so I'm actually going to move this, copy this, delete that, and then we're going to add some temp variables up here. Paste this in. We're also going to want to have the dictionary of the long and the string of all language IDs. This should be dictionary of all language IDs is a new dictionary of type long string, like so. I do need to include the equal sign there. Then let's see on here. I guess it's copying over the way that we had it before. So I'm going to actually just use the same what we had before. Let IntelliSense fill that out. And I have this reversed. So we need the string and the long. Get line separator should be over in here. Let's go ahead and come down to this, and on this one we can make this a public static, like so. Come back to form 1 and include on here manage lexicon dot line separation. All languages is going to be up here with a list, and that was a list of language. All languages is a new list of language. Save that. Now let's see here. It doesn't like our dictionary of language ID. Let me copy that really quick and see why doesn't it like this? Language IDs. It's supposed to have the name and then the ID. It should be string and long. And literally just copy this. Come back over here. Paste it in. But with that all in place now, let me come back up here. These, again, are temporary for now because when we're actually going to build this out, we want more specificity. So this will let us go when we have the user entered. We'll create this temp deck. We're then going to need to load the languages. So we will load languages and get that data. Then we're going to need to load our lists of words. So let's see here. We want to add in a list of words, and this is going to be we'll just call it all lexicon words. We're not really using lexicons here, but this will work. And then the list of words, all other words, because this will be more than just specific language while I'm doing this. I've got words for both Spanish and Ukrainian in there right now. So let's come back down here. And after we load the languages, we want all lexicon languages. We'll clear that out. Actually, we don't want to clear all languages, but all lexicon words. We can start by clearing this out. And we want all other words to be cleared as well. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do a loop, and it will be int I equals 0 while I is less than all languages dot count. We'll do I plus plus. And then what we're going to check for is if all languages of I dot language name is equal to English. So we need to put this in the if statement. So if that is the case, then we are going to add all lexicon words is going to be set to manage lexicon dot load words. And we're going to feed in the all languages ID sub I.id. We're going to feed that in there. Else, we are going to do a temporary list. So to get this, we'll do a list of words of temp list is a new list of words. And you'll see why I'm doing this in a second, because all other words are going to be added to this. But we first need to say temp list is equal to manage lexicon.load words for all languages at I.id. So we'll load it that way. Then with this temp list, we will do a for j equals 0, j is less than the temp list dot count, j plus plus. And then at this point, we will do all other words dot add, and we will add in temp list at index j. So we will add them in one at a time to this. At the end of this, we'll have all the lexicon words as one list and all other words as a second list. I need to include an int on there. So there we go. Now that we're done with this part, let's go to the design. And we just need to put in a couple of things to complete what we're doing for our minimal viable product. So let's come over to Common Controls. And I want to get a rich text box. We'll put this up here. We'll go across like so. Hit this Control C, Control V, and put this right underneath. So again, this is just going to be the bare bones. I'm going to call this RTB with display 1. And then this is going to be RTB display 2. One thing I want to do is change the font on this to make it a little bit bigger. So we will increase to say 24 on this. Hit OK. Come down here, do the same thing. And that's just for readability. We'll hit OK like that. Again, we will work on making all of this better shortly. But for now, we've got this done. The users entered, and we're up to here. Oh, one other thing that I need to add really quick. And we're going to put a button. So put a button, and we'll put it right here. This is going to be btn next. And we'll come down here and just do and next. Save this, and we will double click on that just to create the menu, but we're not going to go into the menu yet. Let's come back up to the user entered. So at this point, we've got all of the words. We've got everything loaded in the lexicon, all the current lexicons. So with that, let's go ahead and create another temporary thing. Actually, this one will end up being permanent. So we can come down here after user denied, and what we're going to call this one is going to be private void, and we'll just call it flashcard program. Like it's going to be the main gist of the program. Then it comes in here. So the first thing when we call on flashcard program that we want to do is we want to create a random variable. So we're going to need to have random, RND is going to be a new random object. From this, we can then have an int of RND index, random index, and it's going to be a RND next. And you can see it starts with 0 and it goes up to the number that we want to choose. Well, the number is going to be our temp.dec.count. That's where we're going to be going through. So it's going to pick one of those random entries. With this integer now in place, what we can do is we can go ahead and update the text. We need to locate the text value of the words that we just pulled for this random index. So to get that, first we start with, we look up the ID. So we're going to have an int, we're going to have a long of the chosen word ID. That's going to be temp.dec at index RND index. and it's going to be the word or phrase ID. Okay. Then we're going to need the chosen translation ID, which is going to be the temp dec random index dot associate word or phrases, and we will skip 0. 0 is going to be the language, so we'll just take 1. All we're going to look at right now is just the first item. We'll deal with everything else later. This is just a proof of concept, basically. And yes, that needed to be chosen target ID, so I corrected that really quick. And to get back on point now, we're going to need to look up what this word is. To find that word, it's under the other words already. So we need to loop through other words. So it'll be for int I equals 0, I less than all other words dot count I plus plus. And we are looking for if all other words dot ID is equal. If this is equal to the chosen target ID. If this comes up, then RTB display one dot text is equal to all other words I dot word or phrase. And to make sure that it clears it out, we're going to do RTB display dot one, and we're going to clear this. And this actually needs to go before we come into here, and RTB display to clear that as well. Once that is done, we're going to repeat the same thing, but for int I equals 0, I is less than. In this case, it's going to be all lexicon words dot count I plus plus. Put this in. And now if all lexicon words at I.id is equal to the chosen word, so it picked the right one, then RTB display 2 that text is equal to all lexicon words at index I dot word or phrase. So this is how we will set this up. And so then let's copy this, come down to the button next, and we will paste that in here. Semicolon. So when we click on next, it will load that. We can also come up to after users entered, after we do all of this, we can come down and we can paste it in here. So the first time through, it will launch that. Now let's see if this works as intended. So I'll run this. This comes up, we select my user, and you can see we've got Privyet is hello, and we hit next, and it could repeat the same thing. Let's make sure that we have more than that. I didn't mean to close it. So let's make sure that we have more items in here, because right now, under Manage Lexicon, under English with hello, you can see the first association is Privyet, I think. There's nothing else associated here. So let's go ahead and add in, say, test. We'll save that. We'll come over to Spanish and we'll put in examine. We'll add that and move this over so you can see. Let's save that. Now we can do test and examine, and we will link those words. And let's just do test 2. Add that. We'll save that. We'll come over here, examine 2. We'll add that, save that, and we will link these together. Now we'll exit out, and when we hit next on here, we might need to actually close out and go back in, because I think, yeah, we'll have to restart the program because it loaded originally on entry, so it didn't include those new items. We will update that shortly, but now when it comes in, you can see examine 2, test 2. We hit next a couple times here. Looks like it's only picking one item though when it comes through. It turns out that the problem was that these lines here needed to be included after the for loop started. So I moved them down into here. And now when we run this, select a name, and you can see this pops up, examine 2, text 2. We can do this, examine, test, here, hola, hello, hola, and hi. These are just the ones that I've linked together. But at this point now, we can start manipulating these cards and making it into a genuine flashcard type program. And we will get to that, not the next video. The next video, I want to do some refactoring of the code to make it a little cleaner, easier to follow. And then the video after that, we will start manipulating the cards and doing programs to show one, not the other, to play audio, things like that. So I look forward to seeing you then.